So, you want to buy a football club. You've watched the game your whole life. You know the tactics, you know the transfers, you know exactly what the manager should have done in the 67th minute, and you've explained it to everyone within earshot who didn't ask. And somewhere along the way the thought arrived, what if I just owned the whole thing? So let's get you a club. Football clubs are available right now at every price point imaginable. A non-league English club can be acquired for less than £100,000, a mid-table championship side for somewhere between 30 and 80 million. A established Premier League club starts at around 500 million and climbs, depending on how badly you want it and how many other people want it too, into the billions. Manchester United was purchased by the Glazer family in 2005 for £790 million. It is currently valued at somewhere between $5 and $6 billion, so this is obviously a great investment. Except almost nobody makes money from it. Here's the contradiction that breaks the entire premise. The majority of football clubs, at every level, lose money, consistently, structurally, not because they're mismanaged, although some are, but because the economics of the sport are specifically designed to consume whatever revenue comes in, and then ask for more. The reason is wages. Football has no meaningful salary cap, none, and the competition for players, globally, constantly, with agents working every angle simultaneously, means that as revenues rise, wages rise faster. The Premier League's collective revenue grew from around £2 billion in 2010 to over £6 billion by 2023. Wage bills grew proportionally, sometimes faster. The money arrives and immediately exits through the wages line. So why does anyone buy these things? Let's look at a case study that reframed how the industry thinks about itself. Roman Abramovich bought Chelsea Football Club in 2003 for around £140 million. Over the next 19 years, he spent approximately £2 billion on players alone. Chelsea won every trophy available to them. The club became one of the most successful in European football history. When sanctions forced him to sell in 2022, the club was purchased by a Todd Boehly-led consortium for £4.25 billion. Abramovich spent billions and sold for billions more. The trophy cabinet was real. The return was also real, but here's what that story obscures. Abramovich wasn't running a business. He was running a vanity project subsidised by a personal fortune built entirely outside football. The model only worked because losses were irrelevant to him personally. For every Chelsea, there are 50 clubs where the wealthy owner arrived with ambition, absorbed losses for a decade, and left quietly with significantly less money and a mid-table finish. Here's the deeper truth that the Chelsea story accidentally buried. Owning a football club is not like owning a normal business. In a normal business, if your product costs more to make than it sells for, you change the product. In football, you cannot. The product is winning. Winning requires players. Players cost whatever the market says they cost. And the market is irrational in ways that would make any economist quietly weep. Clubs pay transfer fees, upfront non-refundable payments, for players who then get injured, or underperform, or decide they'd rather be somewhere else 18 months later. Juventus paid €115 million for Cristiano Ronaldo in 2018. He left on a free transfer in 2021. The accounting on that decision is not pleasant reading, and yet every window, every club, the spending continues, because the alternative, not spending, not competing, means finishing lower, which means less prize money, which means less broadcast revenue, which means smaller transfer budgets next season, which means finishing lower again. The treadmill only runs in one direction. So what are people actually buying? Here's the hidden incentive, and it's the thing that explains everything that otherwise makes no sense. Football clubs are media assets disguised as sports teams. A Premier League club guarantees you global broadcast exposure across 188 countries every single week for 9 months of the year. Your brand, your shirt sponsor, your stadium naming rights partner, all of them are buying access to an audience that no advertising budget can otherwise reliably purchase. The commercial ecosystem around a football club is worth multiples of the football operation itself, if you know how to build it. Then there's the real estate angle, and this one is hiding in plain sight. A football club comes with land, often a lot of it. A stadium, a training ground, car parks, undeveloped plots in cities where land values only move in one direction. Tottenham's new stadium, opened in 2019, is not primarily a football venue. It hosts NFL games, boxing, concerts, corporate events. It has a hotel inside it, restaurants, a microbrewery. The naming rights alone are worth hundreds of millions over the contract period. The football is the anchor tenant in a year-round entertainment complex that happens to also play in the Premier League. You are not buying a team, you are buying a planning permission with a fan base attached. But here's what the financial architecture cannot account for: the fans. Football supporters are not customers in any conventional sense. They do not behave like customers. They do not leave when the product deteriorates. They do not shop around. They inherited their club the way they inherited their surname, without being asked, before they were old enough to evaluate the decision. And they feel an ownership over something they do not legally own, that creates obligations no shareholder agreement captures. There's also the regulatory layer that surprises almost every new owner. UEFA's financial sustainability rules, previously financial fair play, limit how much clubs can lose relative to revenue. The Premier League has its own profit and sustainability rules. Everton were deducted points for breaching them. Manchester City face over 100 charges for alleged violations spanning a decade. The rules are complex, the enforcement is inconsistent, and the legal costs of navigating them are substantial. You cannot simply buy a club and spend your way to success anymore. Or rather, you can try. But there are people whose entire job is to watch you try and issue consequences when you overstep. And the consequences now include points deductions, transfer bans, and in extreme cases expulsion from competitions. The regulatory environment of football is not like other industries. It is part governing body, part cartel, part medieval guild, and it changes its rules with an enthusiasm that keeps an entire legal profession very comfortably employed. So here's the honest answer to your question. You don't want to buy a football club, you want to win things. You want the dressing room access and the manager's ear and the transfer window drama, and the moment your club lifts a trophy, and 70,000 people lose their minds simultaneously. You want to matter in a sport that has mattered to you your entire life. Owning the club is one of the least efficient ways to get any of that. The people who buy football clubs successfully, who build value, who win things, who don't end up in an acrimonious departure 3 years later, are not fans who got rich. They are operators who understood that they were buying a media business, a real estate vehicle, a brand platform, and a community institution simultaneously. And who had the patience and the capital to manage all four at once without confusing any of them for the others. The fans in the stands have a cleaner relationship with the club than the owner does. They just show up, believe completely, and go home. Nobody sends them a regulatory compliance report. There is one last thing worth saying. Every so often, someone buys a football club for all the wrong reasons: sentiment, ego, nostalgia, and it works out anyway. The football is good, the fans are happy, the losses are manageable, and the whole thing somehow coheres into something worth having. Those stories exist. They are real. They are also, in the economics of football, the equivalent of a rounding error. But they are the reason, late on a Saturday afternoon when the result has gone your way, and the stadium is still singing, that the next person with too much money and too much feeling will look at a club available for sale and think, how hard can it be?